What funny embarrassing stories from your childhood do you have? Reddit. When I was 4, my brother got Mortal Kombat for SNES. Johnny Cage had a special move which looked like he hit the other fighter in the crotch. So at a family party, I walk up to my uncle, shout at the top of my lungs Johnny Cage, and punched him straight in the sack. Needless to say, Mortal Kombat was confiscated shortly after the incident. My brother did this, but instead of punching his uncle, he did it to the left fielder in the middle of the game. Hilarious twist. The left fielder was his friend and also played MK, and played along. So, all of us spectators watched 2 5-year-olds punching each other in the sack for the rest of the inning. My parents tell a story that when I was around 3-4 years old, we were leaving a party of some sort and they told me go say bye bye to everyone. I took them at their word and decided I would say bye bye to everyone. Apparently, I checked all the rooms, including the bathroom where the hostess sister was sitting on the toilet peeing, and I just marched right in, gave her knees a hug, said bye bye, and closed the door behind me. She came out thinking it was hilarious. Luckily, people need to learn to lock the bathroom door. These kind of embarrassing things can be avoided. I was probably 6 or so. Brought my dad's Playboy outside to show him what I found while he was chatting with a bunch of neighbors. When I was 3, we had a cat named P-Cat. Whenever my mom would burp fart, she would blame it on the cat by playfully yelling P-Cat. Flash forward to dinner at a restaurant with my visiting grandparents, aunt and uncle. Uncle sitting next to me lets out a meek, well-hidden burp. I yell pee loud enough for the entire restaurant to go silent. Aunt nearly pisses herself. When I was little, I had a habit of chewing on my pencil, and my mom told me not to do that because I'd get brain damage from eating lead. Yes, I know it's graphite and not lead. Fast forward a few months, we had just gotten new couches which were very light in color, and for some reason I decided to write on the back with markers. My mom confronted me about it and asked me, why would you do something like this? My answer was, I've got brain damage. I've been eating lead. Seems like a legit excuse. Your story makes me think about one of mine. I was maybe 4 years old too, and I got out of bed because I couldn't sleep. I heard my dad watching TV, so I got up in the living room, and he was watching P. It was back when people didn't watch P on the internet, but would rent VHS. All I remember was a blonde girl getting fricked, and moaning loud as heck. He saw me, quickly closed the TV and pretended nothing had happened. The day after, there was a birthday party or something and the whole family was there, and I started telling them that daddy was watching a movie yesterday and the lady kept screaming. I then proceeded to moan like she did. My family thought it was hilarious and would always ask me, what are the ladies saying in daddy's movies? And, not understanding why it was so funny, I would proceed to moan. I know where I got my twisted sense of humor from. TLDR. Caught my dad watching P when I was 4. I kept moaning like the actress in front of the whole family. 1. When I was first learning to talk, my first word was Barbara, my mother's name. Since everyone called her that, I suppose I assumed that's what I had to call her. So she would take me out and I'd be merrily chanting Barbara, Barbara over and over. She would correct me, saying no, mommy, and I would respond, no, Barbara. So apparently during one of these back and forths an older lady was in the same grocery aisle as us. The older lady came over and asked me, little boy, how come you won't call your mommy mommy? I looked at her for a moment and thoughtfully replied, frick off, which apparently was something else that was said in my house enough for me to pick up. Needless to say, my mother was mortified and I get to hear this story frequently. 2. When I was 5, I was determined to get a car to run over a sizable rock I found in the yard. Being unsupervised in the front yard, this was the mid-80s so it was okay to do that. I figured that a car would try to avoid a rock in the road, so I'd have to throw it in front of the car as it was going by in order to get it under the tire. This ended in my parents having to buy our neighbor a new passenger window. TLDR. Telling strangers to frick off. Bad rock aim. When I was about 6 I was hanging out with a girl from my apartment complex climbing trees. I had a branch between my legs doing a little shuffle to get further out and she said it looked like I was humping it. I didn't know what that meant so I was like, yeah I hump all the time. I went to my dad's house for the weekend and while the family was laid out on our pull-out couch watching MASH, I started smashing my groin into the mattress yelling, "Look dad, I'm humping the mattress." I was severely reprimanded. I once made a gumball disappear while I was completely naked. I was 4-ish, gumball, hidden in butt crack. To this day, never trust a naked magician is a running joke in my fam. Good trick, though. They were sincerely mystified for a minute. Never trust a naked magician. I will definitely find a use for that. I don't remember this, but my parents have always told me that when I was about 3, they were having a party, and I came downstairs buck naked, leaned on the railing to the stairs, and calmly said to everyone at the party, "Get out of my house." I picture you coming down the stairs with a .45, a cigarette and a husky voice. When I was about 4 I was with my parents at church when they allowed me to use the restroom alone for the first time. 2 or 3 minutes later I come walking down the aisle of the church with my pants and underwear around my ankles looking for my mom because I couldn't button my pants back up. This happened with my then 4-year-old son 2 years ago. To up the ante, he had taken a crap in the urinal because the stall was full. Apparently, when I was like 3 or 4, well soon after my parents' divorce, I kept referring to my soon-to-be stepmom as my dad's mistress. When I was 3 I was outside playing and apparently decided, after wetting myself, that all my clothes had to come off, not just my pants. I then apparently decided that riding my trike down the main street of my town is just what a little naked girl should do. My cousin then shows up at my house and tells my mother, "Did you know your daughter is riding up and down the street on her trike naked?" My mom flew out the door and bundled me up. This is the story she tells to every potential boyfriend male friend I've ever brought home. When I was 5 I saw the commercial for Vagisil. The next day we went camping on a lake, and every time I would jump off the dock I would scream, "I have a yeast infection." Not totally the same, and it was my sister-in-law, but when she was a kid there was Calgon commercials that said, "Calgon take me away," and she had done something bad and was hiding from her mom. When her mom found her she yelled, "Calgon take me away," and started crying. She didn't get a spanking because her mom couldn't stop laughing. When we went to the zoo my brother and I, for some reason unknown to my parents, only wanted to see the hyenas. Once we arrived at the hyena enclosure my brother and I immediately started telling jokes to the hyenas in an effort to make them laugh. We interpreted the moniker laughing hyena a bit too literally. My parents found it hilarious. Maybe you just weren't very funny. I was sitting at a restaurant as a 6-year-old, normally quiet child. We had just started the DARE program at our school and had learned why cigarettes are so bad for you. At the most quiet moment my young brain could have possibly chosen, I proclaimed, "Dad, I wish you and Mom would stop doing drugs." My parents quit smoking shortly thereafter and have never picked it up since. Also, years before I pulled a fire alarm in a racquetball club. My parents probably almost died of shame. I was not a clever child. My best friend had a similar experience in kindergarten. They were talking about the dangers of drinking and driving, and they apparently didn't specify that the drink you weren't supposed to consume was alcohol. So she ended up narsing on her parents to the DARE officer over them drinking soda while driving. Okay, so, when I was younger my mom would always take me grocery shopping with her. I also had some pretty long hair since my parents seemed to like long hair back then. As such these ladies would always stop my mom and state how I was such a cute little girl. Well, me being 3 years old I used to get super mad when someone would mistake me for a girl due to my long hair. So one day my dad told me jokingly, "Next time just drop your pants and show them," or something along those lines. Sure enough it eventually happens again. This old lady comes up and mistakes me for a girl. I did exactly what my father told me. I stood up in the grocery cart seat, dropped my pants, grabbed my dong and shook it at that poor old woman and said, "Girl, this My mom quickly grabbed me and put me under her arm kinda like a football player and made a beeline right for the car. She gets back home with me and my dad proceeds to ask where are the groceries, to which my mother replies, "Remember what you told him to do next time someone mistakes him for a girl." My dad quickly bursts into laughter as he realizes what happened. I lost it at girl this. Good for your 3-year-old self. I was once on this really long flight, Philippines, Belgium, and I was playing this game on the little screen on the chair. I believe it was some Mario game, yeah. Singapore Airlines had some great technology, don't ask me which, though. I had the urge to pee, but decided I had played too much for me to just leave and go to the bathroom. So I decided to pee in my pants. When my parents saw I wet myself, they asked me why I didn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't find the pause button was apparently a rather hilarious answer. I was about 6, I think. A true gamer. I was in a park with my uncle when I was about 5 years old. Suddenly I see this girl, same age, playing. So I walked up to her. Everything seemed fine. My uncle later said that it looked like I liked her. Well, all of a sudden he hears a loud screaming. So he walked up to us. Apparently she had tried to kiss me, so I bit her in the face. He just grabbed me and ran away. Another time I had just been watching TV and I saw this condom commercial. I had no idea what a condom was, but it looked very similar to this foam mushroom candy that we have here in Sweden. The commercial said something along the lines of "Try our new condoms, now with strawberry flavor." Later that day I followed my mom shopping when I suddenly remembered that I wanted candy, a certain kind of candy. So of course I started yelling, loud, in the store, "Mom, I want condoms with strawberry flavor." Sadly, I didn't get any. One day, a friend who lived in the condominiums, condo, on the next street was over. We were both 8 or 9. My older sister, 17, had a friend over, and my friend and I overheard a joke that involved condoms, and he laughed. I didn't get it. Sister's friend asked my friend if he knew what a condom was. I said, of course he does. He lives in one. While they handed around the offerings basket in church, 4-year-old me decided to drop in our family's offering and loudly quote my favorite movie to the usher and the whole dang church. "Keep the change, you filthy animal." Stepmother was mortified. Dad laughed his butt off. I said this to a pizza delivery guy once. I was 19 and very drunk. When I was 6 I heard my parents talking about a married couple. Mom said she had just talked to the wife and she said they have problems that they just can't work out. Dad responds, "Oh yay? What's his boyfriend's name?" and they both laughed. Of course I didn't get the joke at the time. Fast forward to that Sunday, in the church basement, about 100 people gathered around at tables for a luncheon. The aforementioned guy, our pastor, is telling a story and holding the attention of a majority of the room. He finishes. There is a silence. As a 6-year-old who wants to be as helpful as possible, I suddenly think, hey, I can help answer Dad's question. "So little Sun Tzu for you," in his most inquisitive voice, asks the pastor, "What is your boyfriend's name?" The record scratches and I think someone dropped a spoon. Other than that, crickets. Suddenly, a man hurriedly gets up and runs out of the room. The pastor eventually got a divorce and was asked to leave the church. He came out about a year later. He married the man who ran out of the room that day, and everyone lived happily ever after in Iowa. TLDR. His boyfriend's name was Richard. Everything turned out better than expected. I wasn't expecting that outcome at all. My family was attending a show with some family friends. My dad had been chatting with his female friend for a very long time. Fed up, I said, "Barbara, stop romancing my dad." I was 6 years old. When I was 2 my family took me to the best place ever, Disney World. When we were there, my single memory is queuing for an hour to give Mickey Mouse a hug. When we got there, I cried, pulled down my trousers, and shat on the floor. No one knew what to do. In 1st grade, the teacher asked us what we dislike about our parents. My mom used to kick me, softly and jokingly, on my butt, which I hated. I proceeded to answer, "My mom kicks me." The horrified look on the teacher's face made me realize my mistake. Also, my mom went grocery shopping and tripped over the step at our front door, breaking a bottle of wine and cutting a massive chunk of flesh out of her hand. Had to go to the doctor. The next day I told one of my friends. A few days later my mom was approached in town by a friend of mine's mom, asking her if she was okay because she heard she fell with a bottle of wine in the liquor store. My mom was livid. My brother, also in primary school, my mom's windows are so dirty, I can't see through them. Then, on another occasion, my sister wrote in her essay on what happened the weekend that her mom and dad fought over a bottle of wine. In reality, they both wanted the last bit of wine in one bottle and calmly sorted it out. These stories were all voiced at the same school, and yet my parents were seemingly respected. I don't remember really but has heard this retold many times. I'm a Swede and as a 3-4 year old we planned a vacation to Florida, US. Prior to this event I had looked at a catalog of various things to do such as a big zoo, Disneyland etc. Naturally, I was stoked. This was going to be awesome. Now, mind you, this is late 80s and Sweden had much less immigrants at this point than today, plus I grew up in an upper middle class suburb so, what I knew by then was that everyone in the world was white as snow with blonde hair. Oh well. So, we eventually make our way over there and as we descend into the airport and walk around I see something I've never seen before. People that aren't just white. That is, black people. Now, remember what I said about the zoo in the catalog? Yeah, I loudly exclaimed look at all the monkeys in Swedish. Luckily, no one understood, but my big brother got so wickedly embarrassed yet my father's friends all laughed their butt off. When I was about 5 years old I had a cat called Dog who would always follow us when we went out. We were walking to the shops and Dog was following us, so I started yelling Dog, go home we won't be gone for very long. Well, an elderly lady saw this and came up to me and said no dear, that's a cat, and was telling me how I should learn the differences. My mum and dad had to explain that the cat was called Dog and I knew that he was a cat. My auntie used to have a cat that liked climbing. Her name was Apple. The neighbors used to think we were crazy shouting Apple, get down from that tree. I don't remember this, but my mom told me that every time we had guests, I went to the prettiest girl, took her shoe off, told her she has pretty feet and asked to play with them a lot, allowed me to do so. Well, this isn't mine but my little cousin did this. He was 4 years old and at a stage where he was extremely mischievous. It should be noted that he lives at the top of a pretty big, steep hill. One day we were all outside in his garden, playing and whatever, and my little cousin quickly runs to the gates, strips off and runs down the street, butt naked, screaming at the top of his lungs Nangaya, which is Urdu for naked. Needless to say, we creep up on him every now and again and just scream Nanga as loud as we can. Fun times. Dude, I have a cousin just like time he just didn't say Nanga. He added Deco Nanga while he ran around. Not me but my daughter's story. She was 3, wanted to know where babies come from, so I explained that sometimes when two people love each other they get married and decide to have a baby which grows inside a mommy's tummy then comes out. Fast forward a few months and she sees 2 dogs dry humping and asks what they are doing, and before I can answer, my son, her older brother, says they are trying to make a baby. A few days later we're at a party and she runs in the center of the crowd exclaiming, Mommy, Aunt Derpina's dog is trying to make a baby with his stuffed bunny but he can't marry a toy. Don't think I've ever seen so many people at once laugh until they cried. Once when I was probably 4, I got really excited that a dog liked me, but my friend's mom wasn't so happy about it. I just thought he wanted to playfully wrestle like puppies do. When I was 7 or 8, I accidentally stumbled across pee on the internet, proceeded to show all my neighborhood friends, similar ages. Dad checked history after lady next door rang up to say her son was surfing pee. Whoa, that talk was awkward. I used to be obsessed with the film Trains, Planes and Automobiles when I was a kid, around 5, watched it every day. My parents took me to my very dignified and formal grandparents, and I proceeded to reenact a whole Steve Martin rant scene. I was never told which one, right in front of them. Needless to say, they were rather shocked to hear a 5-year-old swear like a sailor. There's only really one in that, and it's when he tries to rent the original car in the movie. It is hilarious. Rewatch it. To think of a little kid reenacting it makes me giggle. When I was 5 we were at some kind of festival once. I had gotten separated from my parents and in my confusion found someone with similar beard to my dad and insisted that he was my dad. As I had yelled and cried that he was my dad for what felt like a really long time, this poor guy was getting kind of panicky looking around the crowd searching for my parents telling me he wasn't my dad. My actual dad finds me. I remember being very surprised. When I was little, maybe 4 or 5, I had a bad dream and went to my parents' room in the middle of the night. I opened the door pretty quietly and heard them moaning each other's names. Obviously it was business time. Seeing as I was little, I didn't know what was going on and after 30 seconds or so just sat down in the middle of the floor, started crying, and yelled what about, my name my parents, naturally, proceeded to freak the frick out because they had no idea I had been there. It's never come up since. I don't know if they remember it but it wasn't until I was about 13 that I realized what I had actually done. In a quiet line at the bank, I was a sweet little 4-year-old digging through my mum's purse. I pull out a tampon and proudly, and loudly, exclaim to my mum, hey, mum you stick this up your fanny don't you? Poor mum goes bright red, and leaves the bank in shame. All the while, the bank remained silent. I think I was just really excited to go through puberty back in the day, as evidenced by these 2 stories. 1. I was at a dinner party, which Middle Easterners have frequently, men and women in separate rooms, and found myself recounting to the mothers the story of my very young cousin walking in on me taking a shower and exclaiming, why do you have hair down there? One of the mothers says, what? You're only 11. You have pubic hair. I guess I felt the need to defend my newly sprouted womanhood and yelled, yeah, I have tons. At which point, the roar of laughter from the men listening in from a different room resonated throughout the house. 2. The day after I got my first bra in the 5th grade, I walked into class, yelled, hey, everybody, look what I got, and lifted up my shirt. I don't even know. My dad told me that when I was a kid, I was very flatulent. One day before I was able to talk in full sentences, I farted, looked at my dad and said OWW. Hot twas my first full sentence. My dad still laughs his butt off whenever telling this story. Okay, well, when I was about 6 my mother had a close work friend that we would go visit from time to time. She was a black woman with 4 teenage sons and she lived in a much more inner city area than we did. Well, one time, we went to one of her son's football games at the local high school. So while my mother was sitting in the stands with her friend, I was wandering around with 2 of her sons, probably 13 and 14 or thereabouts, and we came across this really big nasty spider fricking about in its web. One of the boys told me this spider was called a black widow and that it was very dangerous. Being a 6-year-old, I had a limited vocabulary and didn't understand, but I was immediately horrified and ran back to my mother, through a stadium full of black families, screaming about a big scary black weirdo under the stands. Awkward, I'm sure. I walked in on my dad and his missus getting busy when I was 11. All I heard was shh, don't move, we never spoke of that night again. Just like dinosaurs, if you don't move, they don't see you. I was at a friend's house when I was about 10 and we were playing Mario Kart 64. I was power sliding, like a boss, and thus hitting the R button a lot, which elicits a little boing to pop up. I kept saying boing, boing, boing out loud. My friend's overzealous mother thought, somehow, that I was referring to an obscure term for banging. She sent me home and I had to explain the whole thing to my mom, who agreed that my friend's mom is an idiot. When I was about 5, I finally, after about 6 months of begging and pleading, got all the original Power Ranger weapons and combined them to make the Power Blaster. At the next house party, I came downstairs in my underwear and asked the 9-year-old daughter of a neighbor if she wanted to come to my room and play with my Power Blaster. She didn't. I do not remember this, but my parents always tell this story. I was in church and maybe 4 years old. The pastor was talking about money and asked how much money does it take to be happy. I yelled $1.55. That was the start of my comedy career. First time I ever heard the word frick was at camp the summer after kindergarten. I thought it was such a ridiculous sounding word that there was no way it could actually be offensive. My friend with the turtle backpack dared me to say it to the teachers 10 times. I walked over to the teacher table. This went down at lunch, and I proceeded to say frick 10 tunes. I'll never forget the look on each teacher's face as they recoiled in horror. My own teacher snatched me by the arm and immediately started yelling at me in the hallway. My "I didn't think it was a word" excuse was pretty pathetic too. To this day I'm still jealous of that kid's turtle backpack. Man, I want a turtle backpack. Age 6. Recent immigrant to the country. Still learning the English. Was probably my first trip. The hairdresser. Sat down. Looked at the lady and said, "I want a blowjob." Thought it was a type of hairstyle. My whole life my parents encouraged me to appreciate as many different stylings of music as possible, and thus was exposed to some music that I normally wouldn't have heard at early ages. So when I was about 5 or 6 my favorite song was Smack My B Up by Prodigy. Apparently I used to sing it when I was out with my parents in public. Listening to Prodigy while reading this. Good times. When I was about 3, from what my mom told me, I picked my nose and got one of the biggest boogers she has seen. I then proceeded to ask her, "Can you eat it for me? It's too big." Keep in mind, my parents had some of their friends over and it was right in front of them. When my very loud and animated son was a toddler, Finding Nemo came out. Nemo merchandise was in all the stores. Well, he couldn't say the word fish. So everywhere we went took mama, "It's shoots. Boo shoots and yebo shoots and 1, 3, 5, 10 shoots. I hold shoots now, mama." Live fish tanks resulted in a steady stream of chubby sausage finger pointing and a Sangsanji barrage of shuits. Crap and crap and crap and crap and crap and shuits. My 20-month-old daughter refers to every cat she sees as titty. No more pet stores, until she can pronounce a hard C. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.